All right, welcome to Restoring Childhood on the Same Page. I'm your host, Ryan Dalton, and this week we're going to be talking about Chapter 3, which goes over risky play and the need for unstructured, unsupervised play with kids. I have three amazing guests with me today, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Let's start over here.
I'm Virginia Fillers. I'm the director at Soul Song Montessori Parents Day Out at First Presbyterian Church, and I'm also the parent to an 11-year-old.
Hi, I'm Breanna Kincaid. I'm a mother of three children and an artist and an art educator locally. And I have a 22-year-old, 16, and 9-year-old.
And I am Dr. Tony Michael. I'm a professor at Tennessee Tech University in the Department of Counseling and Psychology. I'm also a licensed professional counselor, registered play therapist, and I have a small practice here in Cookeville.
Awesome. So all of us here are parents, so we have that experience. And then there's various kind of connections to play. You're obviously a play therapist. Risky play is huge at Montessori. And we've messaged about your kids playing with knives. So we'll get into that.
That is not what it sounds like.
We'll get into why that's important later.
Yeah.
But beyond that, you're
Yeah.
an artist, art teacher, and have seen, I think, the power of play and all of that. But I really, at some point, do want to get into that. But that's a good little teaser there for people to stick in with us. But so let's just start off. So this chapter is called, let's see, it's chapter 3. It's called Discover Mode and the Need for Risky Play. So let's just start off by kind of, would anybody be able to kind of define risky play? What do we mean by risky play?
So risky play, my favorite definition is play that makes adults nervous.
Yeah.
The book goes a little more in depth with, it involves risks, it involves the chance of injury, things like that. But I just love the way Rusty Keeler sums it up by saying it's play that makes the adults nervous, because the kids are not nervous when they're doing those things. Like if you're watching them in a natural playscape, they're running, they're jumping, they're climbing, they're just having the time of their lives. We're the ones that are trying to fight against oh, be careful, oh, don't do that. And it's so hard to fight that sometimes.
And I've heard you many times talk about don't say be careful.
Yes, I try to rewire my staff and any of the parents at my school, because we always default to that. We always just jump in before anything even happens and go, oh, be careful, because we have this false expectation of what's going to happen. But most of the time, they're fine. And if they're not, injuries happen. We have first aid kits. We know what to do if somebody gets hurt. A scrape and a bruise here and there, that's them learning.
And I think a lot of parents feel nervous or scared when they hear this talk about risky play and the chance of getting injured. Before we even dive into this, what are the types of conversations specifically you have at Montessori with parents about this? Because I can imagine not every parent is cool with just the risk of their child getting injured at a playtime.
I feel like at this point they've come to expect it out of us. Okay. But when we were really kind of introducing this concept, Breanna was actually one of our parents at Soul Song, and so you were kind of there as we embraced more and more risk. And we did baby steps. And I do a seminar every year for my parents at my school to kind of get them a little more comfortable with it. I explain what it is, what it isn't, how to handle it, how to flex your own muscles on that. Because it is hard. A lot of us have really been raised to say, no, that's too risky, don't do that, don't climb that tree, don't jump over that creek. But it's so beneficial. I know, Tony, we've spoken before about the benefits with the prefrontal cortex and everything.
Yeah, no, I really like your whole approach. And I was reflecting on, we did a radio show in the past, and that be careful. And I started thinking about, okay, don't say be careful, be careful, right? Like be full of care that you want to promote your child's curiosity and openness. And I think that's where you talk about like risky play is, I kind of reflect on how it's calculated. It's a calculated challenge, right? Like there is potential to maybe have a harm or some minor type of injury, but it comes with a place of being able to take a risk to promote your confidence, you know.
Yeah, and I've heard maybe it's you differentiate between risky play and reckless play.
Yes.
Is that
Yeah, and they do touch on that in the book as well. Part of risky play is a prepared environment. You're not going to let your 4-year-old just run alongside the side of an oceanfront cliff. But can they go down to Dogwood Park and hop over that little creek? Yes, they can manage that risk.
Yeah.
So in a way, the environment is sort of another teacher or another parent in that situation. And so you just need to be aware of what's happening. Is there broken glass? Obviously, you don't want your children running there.
Yeah.
So you just kind of survey your environment. We go out and we check our playscape every morning because we are right in the middle of town and people do come and play on the weekends and things like that. Fortunately, people take very good care of our playscape and we appreciate that. And we do check it every day to make sure there aren't any hazards out there so that way it is risky and not reckless.
awesome? So let's jump into this. What were some specific quotes or moments in the book, in this specific chapter, that kind of stood out to you about this? I guess we should frame it by saying this is in context of the idea that it's not just what the kids are sort of being exposed to on the screens. It's not just the negative impact of the screens themselves. It's what they're missing out on in the real world. And this chapter really goes in depth about that. So what are some things that stood out to you all?
I had 2 words, and I love finding words that really describe the ideas that I'm getting. And so the 2 words were uncertainty and unsupervised, and those could be really positive words or really negative words. And in this chapter, I gathered really positive things that will help me parent. Those 2 words, the uncertainty of risky play, is what gives us as a parent anxiety. Like, what's going to happen to them? I don't know what's going to happen if I let them run in the backyard or go biking down the road alone. But that's also, to me, the value in risky play, is that uncertainty, what they will discover.
Yeah.
And that's so valuable. And so those 2 words really stood out to me. And then I had a quote written that I'll try and remember what it says exactly, but that need to explore forests and junkyards in search of novelty and adventure. And that's the uncertainty, is what's going to happen if they explore, but that's also the discovery. They're going to discover, they're going to come up with new ideas. As an educator, that's what I'm looking for in my students, those new ideas, to generate them all on their own. And it's also the child's choosing for themselves, and they're going to know the risk physically if we teach them, the background, the foundation of how to play.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I really like the uncertainty idea because I feel like that concept of uncertainty for the parent side of things is what gets that void. Maybe it's a void of uncertainty. All the questions, what could happen, gets filled with fear. And that fear often overrides any freedom that we would give kids. And so we try to protect them. And it's where he talks about the overprotection in the real world. I've written this down a lot, but overprotection in the real world, underprotection in the virtual world.
Yeah.
But that uncertainty is what creates wonder for kids, imagination. They figure out how to problem solve.
Yes.
That uncertainty is the key that they need to grow into these strong beings who can think for themselves, make critical decisions in certain moments.
I think it carries into adulthood too.
Absolutely.
As an artist, I'm going to take risk with my work, with my career, that might lead to uncertain pathways. But if I don't ever take those, we might not have great works of art. If artists never take these risks, if inventors, and so these are things that are values that are going to carry into so many aspects, this risky play. And I think maybe risky isn't necessarily, when it comes to people's mind, it might sound like reckless. And so that distinction in this chapter was really interesting.
I love that.
That is so good. I will say, building on that, I mean, if you look at my book, I've got all these things written all throughout it. But I'm like, man, it's just really good. And both on the side of like psychology, counseling. So like my professional side, but then on my personal side, and I didn't say this at the beginning, but I've got 4 children in the Putnam County schools. So 1 at Cookeville High, 1 at Avery Trace, and then 2 at Sycamore. And Yeah, and I just really resonate with this a lot on a personal level, and it challenges me. But along these lines, on page 82, and I realize there's probably some people that are watching this but won't read the book,
Yeah.
right? And so I want to make sure to highlight the book just to say this quote: "We should be giving children more of the practice they need in the real world and delaying their entry into the online world, where the benefits are fewer and the guardrails nearly non-existent." And that just really spoke to me. And there was an instant before that where there's a young girl, Isabel. She's a 14-year-old in Rhode Island that wrote to the Free Press. And she talks about, more or less, the access that she had online.
Yeah.
And how, to an extent, the overparenting that she had, like in terms of like the helicopter parent, in terms of mom was so concerned with the different colored fruits I had,
Yeah, I thought of that. That
the
was
vegetables
convicting.
on the table,
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, you're sitting there like, oh yeah, I want my children to eat
Right.
Yep.
really healthy and all these
Yes.
different type of things. But then it's like, oh, like how many parents give their child a tablet and the child goes into their room, closes the door or whatever it is, and has access to what this child said is access to some really disturbing things in regards to pornography and things like that.
Yeah.
And so, you know,
It says we're misallocating our protective efforts.
Absolutely.
And that was a very powerful small sentence, but we are. And
yeah. And the quote, right below on page 68, we are overprotecting our children in the real world while underprotecting them online. And it's like, wow, that's just a good quote.
Yeah.
I've
That's
got
great.
that star in
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because that is powerful right there.
And one of my favorite parts about this entire book, and specifically it's in this chapter, is the story of anti-fragility and kids being anti-fragile.
Yes.
And that really shifted my view. Even though I'm a teacher, parent, and have worked with kids my entire adult life, it really shifted how I think about things, because he basically lays out that anti-fragility is this concept where, like, if you have a wine glass and you throw it on the ground, that's fragile, it's going to break. But living beings, plants, animals, humans, well, humans are animals, but are anti-fragile. And the little bit of struggle, the little bit of push and pull that needs to happen in childhood and early on in the existence of that organism is what makes it stronger and what makes them ready for storms to come, the struggles to come that are bigger. And he tells the story of Biodome or Biosphere 2. And that to me is just, I've spoken about it pretty much every time I've spoken about this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is a great metaphor with the stress wood,
Yeah.
you know, and with the children. And yeah, you can explain it more. You
Yeah.
can do a
Well,
better job.
Yeah, I bring that story up so many
Go
times
for
when I
it.
talk to people about this book. It's just so interesting because they had this biosphere that they created, and the trees were growing and then just toppling over, and they couldn't figure out why. So it discusses in the book, it was because they weren't receiving any stress when they were young. There wasn't any wind or anything like that. And so if we don't give our children those small stresses, then they don't have those roots to stand when the big stresses come later.
Yeah, and I'm seeing that in the school. I don't know about you all, but I'm seeing that in the school environment where we've overprotected these kids in the world to the extent where they haven't had those little small challenges that they need to become stronger, and then faced with challenges, not even huge ones, they're falling over like these trees. And that to me is one of the best examples of why this is important. And when we talk about risky play, when we talk about unstructured, unsupervised play, another thing I really wanted to make sure we touch on is the idea of structured play versus unstructured play. And he talks about that a little bit. did anybody have any thoughts on that, like why it's important? I know in play therapy.
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk about it. So, I mean, structured play compared to unstructured play is really kind of geared at, is it adult driven, right? Adult activated type of play, or is it directed by the child? And so in play therapy in particular, there is two approaches. One is kind of structured and the other one's unstructured or non-structured. But in particular, the key aspect with an unstructured approach is the emphasis on symbolic play. So play therapy builds on the premise that play is the language of the child. And then in the playroom, that toys or objects are their words. And so, you know, in an unstructured therapeutic play environment, a child comes in and has the opportunity to get out what's within them. So like typically play therapy is 2 to 12, and a 2-year-old doesn't necessarily have the vocabulary to express the things that are going on. And so one of the things I give an example to students in the play therapy class at Tennessee Tech is a 2-year-old came in to a session with me and took everything off the shelf. So there's a playroom, there's toys all over it, shelves, took everything down, put it into a big pile, small, cute little 2-year-old, then moved everything in the pile over to another pile. And, you know, I'm sitting there, I'm like, well, what's going on? This is, you know, there's a theme going on here. And after the session, this is about 15 years ago, a mother came up to me and she said, well, how did she do today? And I said, you know, it say something generic, you know, and I was like, oh, she did well, you know, it was a fine session. And she said, well, I want to let you know that this weekend we left her father. And there was some adversity, some unfortunate situations in that family unit. And she said, so we packed up all of our things and we moved to another location. And it was like, that's the power of symbolic play, right? And so in an unstructured setting, that even a 2-year-old can get out the things that are on their mind or on their heart, you know? And obviously a lot of times within this, we're not talking about those 2-year-olds. We're talking about something, older children, you know? But you do start to think about like the importance of unstructured play, like in a recess or in different opportunities. And it's that opportunity to also process out those challenges, to work on your communication, to problem solve, all those different type of things. But so much we live in an age that is so hurried, and we also put so much structure onto everything, right? We overteach, we overparent, we're, you know, overprotective and all these different type of things.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up recess, because he speaks in depth about that, and even how the physical structures of playground equipment have shifted and changed. And I'm sure you probably have a lot to say about that, because your all's play setting is very different than maybe the traditional public school setting.
Yeah, we have a manufactured structure, but then we also have like cut up stumps that the kids can hop on. We've added some loose boards so they can make bridges. And I've seen children as young as 1 go across those bridges that the kids have made. And it's just amazing to get to watch that. And I understand there are lots of reasons that the elementary schools don't want to just throw a bunch of stumps out there and say, hey, kids, have fun. It is definitely something where you have to take baby steps into it. Rusty Keeler, who I've taken some master classes with, likes to say to dream big, start small, but never stop. And I feel like that's what we're really doing in this community right now with this book study, that this is just planting the seeds for so many things to come.
Yeah, and like you said, it would be wild if I went out to Avery Trace Recess tomorrow and I just threw a bunch of tree stumps, some saws, and some like, go ahead, kids, let's...
Sandbags, that's when they mentioned in chapter 11. I thought that's a great one.
Yeah, but, you know...
The kids would love it.
They would love it. They would have a great time. But
you would probably see behavioral problems start to dissipate.
Well,
it would probably really help.
Ren Gubkin, who is at All Good, she often speaks about some of the kids who out in her wilderness play area. Some of the kids who you would think, oh, I don't know if I would want to set them wild out into the woods because they might this, that, and the other, are actually the ones who thrive out there. And they need that, and they need that connection. But I do like the idea of baby steps. We're not just going to do this thing. But in this chapter, he also speaks about these, like, how in this idea of overprotection and safetyism, some schools have, like, gone to the other extreme of, like, regimenting how tag has to be played. He has these tag rules. Which
I haven't ever seen that, so I'm glad that Putnam County doesn't have it that extreme.
Yeah.
It's that there was a quote about it, that aspect, and it was this worship of safety.
Yeah.
And that kind of convicted me, because we are often nervous, anxious moms, and we definitely want them to be safe, but that's also prohibiting the kids to grow, and that's what they need.
Well, and maybe this is a good segue into your kids playing with knives.
Okay.
Let's talk
Yeah.
about that.
I don't know. They're not necessarily playing.
Okay. Yes, please reframe however you want.
Well, and so I have a 22-year-old, and she's in college. She's an architect student in her last year. And as a younger child, I definitely taught her how to use a knife and how to use a saw, and she would make forts, and she would use a hot glue gun. And so that's something I do encourage parents to teach them how to use these tools appropriately so they can do it independently and have times of creating and unsupervised play in that aspect. And so I let them cut vegetables and participate in making meals. And this has made me want to let them let my youngest one make an entire meal on his own, because this is encouraging that. And so we do scouts, you learn to whittle.
Yeah.
And so that's something that he knows how to do now, and I let him do that. And then just in the art studio, I have shown him how to use certain tools.
Yeah.
And I'll keep encouraging those age appropriately.
Well,
So-
in this chapter on page 77, he talks about the risks that children seek out when adults give them the freedom. And these people who studied this found 6 risks that kids will take. And it's heights, which is one, high speed, dangerous tools, dangerous elements, rough and tumble play, and disappearing, where kids are like, you can't find me.
And
But
they actually added to that list a few years later to add impact and vicarious risk.
okay, great.
Oh,
And
interesting.
how are these risks, like, important for this childhood development?
I mean, how are they not? Is
Right.
the easier
Look, that's-
question.
And I have
Because it's
to-
everything.
It is.
It's
but-
all encompassing.
And I know that, like, my daughters have not needed all of these risk as much as my son. He seems to really need a lot of these risks. And that's something I've found really interesting parenting him now, and then the older ones. And it's almost detrimental to his mental health if we don't get many of these. It's just,
Yeah,
so,
sorry.
go ahead. Yeah.
No, I found myself wanting to follow up on these studies. And so obviously that's part of my hat, right, as a professor. So I went back and read them. And I did find a number of things that were really interesting with, the 6 things, the 2 that you added, but also it goes into some more details. It's like, it's a fantastic book. He's highlighting the main premises of some research, but there's additional things that are really, like, worthwhile in terms of consideration. And one of them in particular was they also found some gender differences.
Yep.
Interesting. Yeah.
So that boys might be more willing to take more risk, do more risky play in some of the research findings. But also, too, there was a cultural kind of exploration or expectation of gender differences, right? Like maybe not promote risky play as much within, certain children. So, yeah.
I really like, he talks about the spinning, what are those things called? The
merry-go-round.
spinner
Right.
being
Miracle death.
the best thing ever. And
Most
I
fun.
actually, what's hilarious about him talking about this being such a great thing, because he talks about all the various benefits that you can get from
Yeah.
this, from teamwork to danger to all this. My cousin at Cinderella Park when we were young fell off and he got his head hit under it and he had to get stitches. But it's
Oh,
like,
no.
that's part of growing up.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is here, this quote says, researchers who study children at play have concluded that risk of minor injury should be a feature, not a bug, in playground design. So we have to get away from this idea that playgrounds have to be 100% safe, that there's no way for a kid to get hurt, that we put them in these bubble wrap suits and that they, can't get injured. That's really striking to me.
Yeah, and I found one thing there was a quote in there that he highlights from this Brusani. I don't know if I'm saying it right, and the quote is, physical play. The risk of injury per hour of physical play is lower than the risk per hour of playing adult guided sports.
Yeah, that one really resonated with me.
Same.
Yeah.
And so I went back and I read it, and that is exactly from the research. It was really interesting, though, is which, like, once I say it, everybody's going to be like, oh, yeah, people define injury so differently. Right? Like, some people may say a boo-boo,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or a bruise
Yeah.
is an injury.
I like boo-boo.
Yeah. And then someone else may say, oh, an injury is something more significant. And the terminology actually was medically treated injury.
Interesting.
And so, like, when you think about it, there are more bruises and bumps and scuffed elbows and things like that on a playground than in guided sports. But when it comes that they have to receive medical treatment type of injuries, those happen much more often in adult guided sports than
absolutely.
they do on playgrounds. And I was like, okay, so that's good, because the common person reading this is like, for real? Like, an injury? Like, kids get hurt every time they go to the playground.
Yeah, that's true. I can attest.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like this thing. So I'm a middle school teacher, as you all know, and anytime a kid for the first time comes up to me like, I joined the football team, I'm always like, oh, good. I'm so happy, because I'm glad they have that outlet. I'm glad it's good. It's a great outlet for kids to be in sports. But what I think about what that could potentially be doing to their brains, their little brains, and they are like now, and the internet, it's interesting because the internet has made this all the worse because they're going for these highlight reels. So they're hitting harder than they should be at a younger age. They're trying to create these reels. And they're going, I think, harder than they did when I was a kid. I see kids playing with concussions and things like that. And the damn, and this is not anti-football, just like this whole thing is not anti-tech, but the risk of injury in a football game is much greater than the risk of some of this risky play that we're talking about. And these are the sports that we like support the kids. We take them around everywhere. We pay a lot of money for travel sport to take them to.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think you're exactly right. I mean, I don't have research or anything, but I've heard of different implications in terms of TBIs, so traumatic brain injuries, right? In particular, that a lot of times adult guided or supervised sports, there's potentially a rise in those. Yeah. And compared to 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Or
It's and I see it a lot more. The game has changed in that sense, even with all the research that's out there about it.
And I actually have a TBI, not from football, from a car accident, but it's not fun. It is not an enjoyable thing to have. Short-term memory loss, if I get overheated or too tired, sometimes it affects my speech. So this is something that we can prevent in children by not putting them into situations that increase that risk. And of course, there are situations like mine being a car accident where you just never know. You can't just hide inside forever and be afraid of everything.
Yeah, and I guess the idea is like that we, as a society, have to sort of rethink everything. Like, what are we doing and why are we doing it? That's one of the things this book has made me do is, as a parent, as a teacher, really look at what I'm doing. Because we're talking about kids spending 7 to 9 hours a day on a device outside of school time. But then what am I doing in the classroom? The other hours that they're in school, am I putting them on a device the whole time? That's also not good. So with all of these things, when we're looking at even the structured sports that we're putting our kids in, is there more value in that than just letting them kind of be free a little bit and run wild, drink out of the hose, come in when the street lights come on and all that? I think it's something to look at. And on page 85, he says, those after school hours were probably more valuable for social development and mental health than anything that happened in school other than recess. So
this is a strong statement.
Yeah, and he's coming back to this idea that we need that unstructured time. And really, kids in school, we were just talking about this earlier, that in some middle schools, they're getting as little as 18 minutes a day in recess. We have seen the increase with elementary schools in the state going up to 45 minutes. But even time that should be unstructured in the school schedule, like lunch, a lot of times is adult monitored, adult driven, and they'll even have these like machines that beep if they talk too loud and then they can't talk anymore. And I think about like even these moments within the school day that are supposed to be unstructured, we have completely colonized and not allowed them to have any type of freedom whatsoever. And then after school, instead of going out and being free, playing in the yards, they're on devices. And that to me is really sad to see. And I see the negative repercussions of that in the school setting.
Yeah. It's just an interesting chapter too, because it does, the chapter that connects to it, chapter 11, which I mentioned earlier, that it really kind of brings in, well, what do we do about all this? And so I want to encourage people to read this book. As a parent, it really has taught me that I need to give my children more freedom, especially at a young age. And I've started to utilize some of those practices, and I'm noticing a lot more confidence and a lot more, he's able to do things alone and get over things quicker, and just things that are so valuable that we cannot teach in classrooms.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and you're talking to other parents. One of the things that comes up here is this idea of this culture of fear and safetyism and stranger danger, how when that was introduced, it sort of shifted this idea. He calls it the breakdown of adult solidarity. So suddenly everyone is an enemy.
Highlighted.
Everyone is a threat.
Yeah.
Everyone is a danger. And he talks about how like at one point it was kind of normal for adults to even reprimand other people's kids in public. Like in a store, you see a kid doing something they shouldn't, and the adult's like, hey, don't do that, whatever. And now, I mean, people would be making you viral, or you're a Karen if you do that. But
I might be a Karen at the playground sometimes.
but yeah,
I feel like as teachers, we can't turn it off.
hard to turn it
sometimes.
off.
Exactly. Oh, it is
Yeah.
so hard as a teacher to be standing there and being like, okay, I'm not going to intervene. But
Yeah.
But what are some ways you've seen that shift, like with this idea that, you know, everything around the kids are now a threat. Every person is a threat, and how that shifted and changed, and how it changes how kids interact with the world.
Well, this was the third chapter is when you can start kind of figuring out how to put this into play right away, I think, because it's 3 chapters in. And so when I took my son to the park, I let him ride his bike all the way to a store by himself. That was something new for me at 9, and I thought this is good practice.
Yeah.
And so those are things that I'm going to start practicing from this book, and doing things that will take that fearful element out. And I'm afraid, but he's not going to be.
How have you seen that shift his confidence or his whatever?
I just noticed, and his friends that got to go with him, the other mom was a little shocked that I said, let's just let him go to the bike shop because we had a bike issue. It was a little surprising for that mother to allow that, but it was also for them, those kids came back full of confidence and know how to speak to another adult, how to ask for help. And that's something that I want him to know how to do. And without me.
Yeah.
And so those are skills that he's going to know.
Yeah, and that was not foreign to our childhoods. Well, maybe
No.
not put us all in the same category, but
To the
80s,
90s and 80s,
70s,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
That was not a foreign concept.
Right.
Like we were out all day riding the bike. I mean, my
Yes.
mom did not even know where I was half the time.
We would ride miles.
Yeah.
And in 5th grade, I remember we went to a 5th grade teacher's house and knocked on her door and hung out with her, and then went to the store and then to a restaurant.
Yeah.
And so he's in 4th grade, so I'm going to be more adventurous as
Yeah.
a parent and also allow that unsupervised time. Of course, I was close by and it
Yeah.
was safe, and this, felt like a bikeable distance. So
Well, and part of that sort of breakdown in solidarity is now that is not a norm. And so you even have adults who report other adults for that. So like, oh, I see an unsupervised child, and they'll call the police or whatever. And he kind of touches on that a little bit. And in the book, I always want to call it feral children. It's not called feral children, free range kids. Which similar, but no. But free range kids, she talks a lot about that.
Yeah.
This idea that like, you can't even let your kid have independence because you'll get reported, and we've
Yeah.
created this culture of fear around that.
Yeah, I mean, I think of it like a liability mindset, right? You feel like you're walking on eggshells, and I know our kids, they have a tree outside of our house. You go by there, you'll see jump ropes. I mean, they're up in the trees, and sometimes I'll hear somebody saying, "I don't know how to get down." And so I'll come out and and they'll be like, "You can figure this out."
yeah.
Just to try to promote their confidence and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
But I'm sure that there could be a neighbor that drives by and is like,
Yeah.
"What's going on here?"
This guy always leaves his kid in the trees. Yeah. Well, I cannot believe it, but we are going to have to wrap it up. We have, I've really enjoyed this. I think we could sit and talk about this for hours.
Easily.
Yeah, and I really appreciate your input. I thank you so much for talking about this. I encourage everyone to really dive into this chapter and think about what it means to let kids engage in this. But thank you for coming today. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, both as parents and experts. And yeah.
And I want to say thank you to you.
Oh,
I mean, you took this thing, you found it purposeful and meaningful to you, and then you created really a vision, for our community. And I'd also like to thank Putnam County Schools and all the community supporters and the people that are in the initiative too, because, right, the mission is helping lead to hopefully a change in culture. And this is a really, I don't see too many county school systems that are, supporting, and all these different organizations that are saying, so it's a collective we, right? That it started with a me, and it's went to a we, and it's really, it's just exciting to see, people come and say, we want to see a difference, not just in our community, but hopefully it overflows and throughout,
and it's so timely with the new cell phone laws and rules. And as a parent, it helps me to defend those rules. And I'm really excited what our children will get to experience now, thanks to those rules, even though my 16-year-old hates that opinion.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, and as I've seen, but it is for their best interest.
Yes,
I've had a kid come up to me and say, "You've ruined my life," and I said, "And it's my pleasure to do that. It's for the greater good." So yeah. But thank you so much for being here. Thank you all for being a part of this. I mean, we have all these great partners. We have the Putnam County Library, Putnam County Schools, Hub Plus doing this for us. Plenty. And then you all. We couldn't do it without each and every person here. So thank you so much. And thank you for helping us get on the same page.
Yeah.
So corny, but.